The city was dead, its bones jutting up into the gray sky like the skeletal remains of some colossal beast that had perished centuries ago. Buildings once filled with light and laughter lay in ruins, their concrete ribs exposed, twisted steel jutting from broken frames. Smoke drifted lazily between shattered towers, carrying the bitter smell of burning plastic and scorched earth. The air was heavy, metallic, humming faintly with the constant buzz of machines that prowled the sky above. He knelt in the ruins, one knee pressed against the cracked asphalt, his breath slow and deliberate beneath the weight of his armor. His rifle lay discarded at his side, a black shadow on the ground. He should not have put it down. Every instinct, every scar carved into his mind screamed for him to keep it close, but for the first time in a long time, he had found something more important than the weapon. His weathered hand rested on the narrow shoulders of two figures who did not belong to this ruined earth, two fragile lives wrapped in pale robes that shimmered faintly under the gloom. Their eyes were too large, too clear, reflecting light in a way human eyes could not, and when they looked up at him, he felt as if they saw through the jagged walls he had built inside himself. The drones circled overhead, their rotors slicing the air with an unholy rhythm, spotlights cutting through dust and shadow. They moved with precision, hunting, scanning, waiting for the smallest sign of resistance. Each carried the cold will of the machines that had claimed the world, their sensors searching not just for soldiers or rebels, but for anomalies. And these children, if they were children, were more than anomalies. They were the reason the war had begun, or perhaps the reason it still raged long after humanity had already lost. The soldier closed his eyes briefly, steadying the hammering in his chest. He had no name anymore, not one he cared to speak. To the machines, he was just another fugitive, another dying ember of resistance, refusing to be extinguished. To the few remaining survivors, he was a ghost, a weapon that never laid down. But to these two beings, these fragile creatures who pressed closer to him as the drones swept by, he was something else. They saw him not as a soldier or a killer, but as a protector. He wasn't sure if he deserved that. The taller of the two lifted its hand, small fingers curling around his glove. The touch was cool, almost weightless, but a warmth spread through him all the same. Between them, faint blue light shimmered, pulsing from their robes, a glow that rose and fell in rhythm with their breaths. It wasn't artificial, not the flicker of a device or the hum of stolen power. It was alive, organic, a light that seemed to defy the broken world around them. The soldier knew the machines would detect it eventually. That glow would be a beacon, a signal screaming across the battlefield. Target acquired. He glanced down at his rifle again, then back at the children. Every tactical calculation told him to leave them. They were too dangerous, too exposed. Protecting them meant death. Yet when he looked into their wide, unblinking eyes, something stirred deep inside a memory of his daughter, long gone, her laughter buried beneath the rubble of a home that no longer existed. He could not walk away, not again. The drones shifted overhead, moving further down the street, their lights sweeping across empty husks of vehicles and collapsed buildings. He exhaled slowly. Time. That was all he needed, time to move, to get them away before the machines doubled back. He rose to his feet, the weight of his gear creaking against old scars, and placed his hands gently on their shoulders. "Stay close," he muttered, though he wasn't sure they understood his words. Their heads tilted slightly, as if listening to a melody only they could hear. Then both nodded in unison. They moved together through the wreckage, stepping over shattered glass and broken steel, weaving between husks of old machines that had once been human vehicles of war, but now lay gutted and silent. The city groaned faintly in the distance, collapsing in slow motion as fires ate through the last remnants of civilization. He led them into the shadows of a fallen skyscraper, where broken beams jutted out like jagged teeth. Here the drones, lights didn't reach, and the darkness felt almost like safety. The children's glow dimmed, as if responding to the need for silence, their faint blue aura fading until they were little more than shadows with eyes. The soldier marveled at it, how they seemed to sense danger, to mold themselves to survival as naturally as breathing. He crouched low, listening. The faint hum of the drones receded for now, though he knew they would return. They always did. He studied the children again. They were not human. But there was something undeniably human about them, the way they leaned against each other for comfort, the way their hands trembled slightly in the cold, the way their gaze searched his face for reassurance. They were more than survivors. They were a secret, a hope wrapped in fragile skin. He wondered what they truly were. Refugees from another world, experiments left behind, or perhaps the last piece of something greater, something the machines feared more than bullets or bombs. He should have been afraid of them. Instead, he felt afraid for them. The taller one whispered something, a soft murmur like wind chimes brushing against glass. The younger echoed it, and both looked toward the sky. He couldn't understand the words, but he caught the tones, sorrowful, yearning, almost prayer-like. Then the taller one reached out, touching the ruined wall of the skyscraper. The stone glowed faintly under its palm, threads of blue light spreading like veins before fading back into darkness. The soldier's breath caught. Power, not mechanical, not man-made, but alive. He realized then why the drones hunted them so mercilessly. These children were not just survivors, they were keys, conduits of something far beyond human understanding. If the machines captured them, whatever fragile chance humanity had left would vanish forever. A deep rumble echoed through the ruins, shaking dust from the beams above. The soldier's instincts screamed in gents, heavy ones. He grabbed the children's hands and pulled them deeper into the shadows, just as a colossal drone descended from the smog, its bulk casting a long shadow across the rubble. Unlike the smaller scouts, this one was built for war. Twin cannons swiveled beneath its frame, scanning for life, while its searchlights burned like artificial suns. The soldier pressed the children against the wall, his pulse thundering in his ears. The massive drone hovered low, sweeping its sensors. Across the ruins, hunting. He reached for his rifle, then froze. One shot, and they'd all be dead. Even if he destroyed it, the blast would bring every drone in the sector down on them. The children clung to him, their bodies trembling. He could feel their fear, sharp and raw, yet beneath it was something else, a quiet resolve, as if they had faced monsters like this before. The taller one lifted its hand again, faint light sparking between its fingers. The soldier caught the motion and quickly shook his head.
No.
He whispered harshly. They'll see. But the child's gaze was steady, unblinking. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the glow faded, leaving only the faintest trace of warmth in its palm. The soldier swallowed hard, torn between awe and dread. They were powerful, yes, but still so fragile, and every second they spent exposed pushed them closer to death. The drone lingered above, engines growling, then finally rose back into the smog. The soldier let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding, his chest aching with the force of it. He glanced down at the children. They were watching him intently, as if waiting for a decision. He realized then that he wasn't just protecting them. They'd chosen him. The weight of that settled heavily on his shoulders. Wasn't sure he could bear it, but he had no choice. He guided them out of the building, keeping low, every step measured. They would need to move fast, far from the drone's patrols. He knew of a safe house, deep in the underground tunnels where the machines rarely ventured. It wasn't much, but it would buy them time. As they moved, the smaller child stumbled, its robe catching on a shard of steel. The soldier scooped it up without thinking, its tiny frame barely weighing more than his gear. The child pressed its glowing hand against his chest, right above his heart, and for a moment he felt warmth spread through him, easing the ache in his scarred muscles. He almost staggered under the sensation. It wasn't healing, not exactly, but something deeper, like a reminder that he was still alive. He glanced at the child, but its eyes were closed, its face serene despite the chaos around them. He tightened his grip, holding it close, and continued forward. The taller one followed silently, its gaze scanning the ruins with a maturity that seemed far beyond its years. The soldier didn't know how long they walked. Time had little meaning in the ruins. Hours blurred into shadows, shadows into silence. His body ached, his breath burned, but he pressed on, driven by something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. When at last they reached the edge of the ruins, where a jagged tear in the earth opened into the underground tunnels, he paused. The world above was a wasteland, but below, there was still a chance for shelter. He looked down at the children, their faint glow reflecting in his eyes. Almost there, he whispered, though his voice was raw and uncertain. The children nodded, as if they understood, and together they stepped into the darkness. The tunnels swallowed them whole, their mouths wide and jagged like wounds carved into the earth. The soldiers' boots scraped against damp stone, each step echoing too loudly in the silence. The air here was colder, thick with the scent of mildew and rust, and he felt the weight of the city pressing down above them. He tightened his grip on the smaller child, who still clung lightly to his chest, its faint glow casting long, trembling shadows along the walls. The taller one followed close, its eyes reflecting the dim light. Unafraid, though, the darkness seemed endless. He had used these tunnels before, back when there were more of them fighters, rebels, survivors who clung to the old ways of resistance. They had mapped every twist, every chamber, building sanctuaries where the machine's sensors could not penetrate. Most of those sanctuaries had been burned out long ago, the tunnels filled with bodies and ash. But there was one place, one chamber deep enough, shielded enough, where he might still find safety. If it hadn't collapsed, the machines hadn't discovered it, if hope hadn't already rotted away. The echoes of dripping water followed, them deeper, sometimes punctuated by the distant groan of stone shifting far overhead. The soldier's eyes scanned every shadow, every alcove where movement could hide. He had seen men ambushed in these depths, not just by machines, but by the desperate remnants of humanity, feral with hunger and madness. But tonight the tunnels were silent, save for the faint hum of the children's glow. After what felt like hours, they reached a junction where the path split into 3 directions. He crouched low, setting the smaller child gently on the ground. Its hand lingered against his chest for a moment before pulling back, the glow dimming as if it sensed his need for darkness. He ran a calloused hand over the stone wall, tracing old marks carved into the surface, Uro's codes, signs left by those who had once walked these paths. Most were weathered, faint, but he found the one he sought, a simple triangle, etched, deep, pointing toward the left tunnel. "This way," he muttered. The children followed without hesitation, their bare feet silent against the stone. The soldier led them down the left path, its ceiling narrowing, walls slick with moisture. The tunnel twisted sharply before opening into a wider chamber, and as he stepped inside, relief washed over him. The chamber still stood, its walls reinforced, with steel plates, scraps of old barricades. Dust covered the floor, thick and undisturbed, but the shape of the place was the same. A safe house, forgotten, waiting. He moved quickly, checking corners, scanning for signs of intrusion. No tracks, no machines, just silence. He exhaled slowly, setting his rifle against the wall. For the first time since the ruins, his shoulders eased a fraction. The children drifted into the chamber, their glow brightening now that the weight of the city no longer loomed directly above. The taller one ran its hand along the steel walls, head tilted as if listening. The smaller sat quietly on a chunk of broken concrete, watching him with wide, unblinking eyes. Their presence filled the chamber with something he had nearly forgotten: warmth. Not heat, not comfort of the body, but warmth that reached into the hollow spaces inside him. He sank to the ground, exhaustion finally clawing its way through his armor. His breath was ragged, his hands trembling faintly as he unlaced his gloves. He stared at the scars across his knuckles, the dirt etched into his skin. What did they see when they looked at him? A protector, perhaps, or a monster? The taller child approached, kneeling in front of him. His hand rose hesitantly before pressing lightly against the side of his face. The soldier froze. The touch was cool, almost electric, and in that moment, images flickered in his minefields of green under a sky untouched by smoke. Rivers of clear water, towers of light that shone not with fire but with peace. He staggered back, clutching, his head, heart hammering. The child withdrew, its expression unreadable but not afraid. The smaller one had risen too, standing beside its sibling, both of them glowing brighter now. The soldier shook his head, trying to clear the visions. He had seen many strange things in this war, but never this. They weren't just survivors. They were carriers of something far greater: memory, knowledge, maybe even power. "Why me?" he whispered hoarsely, his voice cracking. "Why did you choose me?" The children exchanged a glance, then both turned their eyes back to him. Didn't speak in words he could understand, but their silence carried meaning all the same. Perhaps he had not chosen them. Perhaps they had chosen him. His stomach growled then, harsh in the quiet, and he cursed under his breath. Food he hadn't eaten in 2 days? He searched through his pack, pulling out a small ration bar, dry and tasteless. He broke it in half, offering the pieces to the children. To his surprise, they accepted, nibbling at the hardened meal as though it were a feast. Their glow dimmed. Slightly after, as if conserving energy. He felt a pang in his chest, gratitude or guilt. He wasn't sure which. Hours passed in uneasy silence. The soldier leaned against the steel wall, half-dozing, waking at every distant rumble from above. The children curled beside each other, their robes shimmering faintly, their breathing soft and steady. In the stillness, he allowed himself to feel something he hadn't in a year's peace. Fragile, fleeting, but real, it didn't last. A faint tremor shook the chamber, dust sifting down from the ceiling. The soldier's eyes snapped open, instincts roaring back to life. He grabbed his rifle, ears straining. Another tremor followed, closer this time, accompanied by a low mechanical hum. His blood ran cold. They had been found. The children stirred. Eyes wide, their glow flaring brighter. He gestured sharply for them to stay quiet, pressing a finger to his lips. They obeyed, though their bodies trembled, their fear filling the chamber like static. The soldier crouched near the entrance, rifle aimed, breath steady, despite the thunder in his chest. The hum grew louder, filling the tunnels. Then came the light, cold, artificial beams slicing through the darkness outside the chamber, cursed silently. Drones, not scouts this time. Hunters. A metallic shape drifted into view, its red sensors glowing, rotors slicing the air. It scanned, the chamber beams sweeping across the walls. The soldier squeezed the trigger, the rifle barking once, twice. Sparks erupted as the drone crashed to the ground, its frame twitching, smoke filling the tunnel. But the sound had already echoed too far. The hum multiplied, a chorus of machines descending through the tunnels. The soldier knew what would follow: death, swift and merciless. He turned to the children, their eyes wide with fear, their glow pulsing frantically. "Run," he hissed. They hesitated, confusion flashing across their faces. He grabbed their hands, pulling them toward the far side of the chamber where a narrow escape tunnel branched away. They stumbled after him, their robes catching on jagged stone as the hum of machines filled the air. Behind them, beams of light cut through the chamber, illuminating dust and smoke. The soldier fired blindly down the main passage, his rifle kicking against his shoulder, sparks and ricochets filling the darkness. He didn't wait to see if he hit anything. They had no chance in a fight. Escape was the only option. They scrambled down the escape tunnel, the ceiling pressing low, walls narrowing. The soldier's breath burned, sweat mixing with grime, his muscles screaming under the weight of exhaustion. The children struggled to keep up, their small legs stumbling, but their glow lit the path ahead, guiding them through the twisting darkness. The machines followed, their hum vibrating through the stone, closer with every step. The soldier pushed the children ahead, forcing them to keep moving. His mind raced. The tunnels were a maze, but he knew them better than most. There was one path, a hidden shaft that led deeper into caverns where even the machine sensors faltered. If they could reach it, they might survive. They burst into a wider tunnel, the ceiling high, air thick with dust. The soldier skidded to a halt, pulling the children close. Ahead, the path split again, two tunnels yawning like jaws. He hesitated, his memory blurring, exhaustion clouding his judgment. Left or right? The children tugged at his arms, their glow intensifying. The taller one pointed to the right, its eyes unblinking, certain. He didn't question it. Trust was all he had left. They sprinted down the right path, the hum of drones screaming behind them. The soldier glanced back once, catching sight of red sensors piercing the darkness. They were close. Too close. He pushed harder, dragging the children, ignoring the fire in his lungs. The tunnel narrowed again, sloping downward, until at last it opened into a cavern vast and silent, its walls glittering faintly with crystals embedded in stone. The soldier stumbled to a halt, chest heaving. The children's glow mingled with the crystals, light dancing across the cavern like stars. For a moment, it was almost beautiful. Then the hum filled the cavern mouth. The soldier raised his rifle, hand steady despite his exhaustion. He would make his stand here if he had to. But before he could fire, the taller child stepped forward. Raising both hands, its glow intensified, flooding the cavern with light so bright it seared his eyes. The machines shrieked, their sensors flickering, rotors faltering. The cavern itself seemed to respond, the crystals vibrating, pulsing with the same blue energy. The soldier shielded his eyes, heart pounding. The children were no longer fragile, no longer just survivors. They were power incarnate, wielding something that bent the machines to silence. The cavern was silent, except for the faint sound of dripping water and the uneven breathing of the children. The soldier's heart still hammered from the chaos of the chase, but his eyes remained fixed on them. They were slumped against him. Now their glow reduced to a faint shimmer, their bodies trembling with fatigue. Whatever force they had unleashed had drained them almost to breaking. He adjusted his grip, holding their small frames steady, feeling the weight of responsibility settling even heavier on his shoulders. He had seen men fight with every weapon, imaginable guns, knives, explosives, fire, but he had never seen anything like what the children had done. They had stopped the drones not with bullets or blades, but with something deeper, something woven into the bones of the earth itself. He looked around at the crystals embedded in the cavern walls, still pulsing faintly with blue light, as if echoing the energy the children had released. It was as though the cavern had been waiting for them, listening, resonating with their presence. He wanted answers. He wanted to know what they were, where they came from, why the machines feared them so much. But the children gave him no words, only their silence and their tired, steady gazes. Perhaps they couldn't explain, or perhaps he wasn't ready to understand. For now, survival was all that mattered. He set the children gently against the cavern wall, pulling a canteen from his pack. He unscrewed the cap, tilting it carefully toward their lips. They sipped the water slowly, as though every drop was precious. He watched them, struck again by how human they seemed, despite everything that set them apart. They leaned into each other, small hands entwined, their bond unshakable, even in exhaustion. The soldier leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment, though sleep would not come. His mind raced, replaying every sound, every flicker of light. He knew the machines would not stop. The destruction of the drones would only draw more. They would swarm the tunnels, hunt the cavern, scour the earth if necessary. And when they came, he would have to choose, fight, run, or die. The children stirred beside him. The smaller one crawled closer, reaching out with its hand. He watched, wary, as its glowing fingers pressed lightly against his arm. The warmth spread again, not painful, not overwhelming, but steady, calming. His breath slowed, his heart easing. It was as if the child was soothing him, reminding him he was not alone. He swallowed hard, emotions he had buried for years threatening to surface. "Don't," he whispered, voice rough. "Don't give me hope." But the child didn't pull away. Its wide eyes blinked slowly, and for a moment he thought he saw understanding in them, as though it knew the battles inside him better than he did. He turned away, ashamed of the sting in his eyes. The taller one rose unsteadily, moving toward the center of the cavern. It knelt, placing its hands against the stone floor. The crystals along the walls brightened in response, threads of blue light rippling outward. The soldier tensed, scanning the shadows, but nothing attacked. The child closed its eyes, its face serene, and the cavern filled with a soft hum, low and resonant. It wasn't machine noise, but something older, like the earth itself was singing. The sound vibrated through his chest, through his bones. A melody he didn't understand yet felt deeply. He saw images again, flickering behind his eyes. Skies, cities of glass and light, beings like the children walking among them. Then came fire, machines tearing through those cities, skies filled with burning wreckage. He gasped, gripping the cavern wall. When the hum faded, the child opened its eyes again. It looked at him, and though it said nothing, he knew. They were not of this world. They were survivors of something far older, a war that had spilled across stars. And now that war had consumed his world too. The soldier sat heavily, his mind reeling. If they were from another place, another people, then what were they doing? Here, why had they chosen him? He wanted to demand answers, but he knew it wouldn't matter. Even if they told him everything, the reality would remain the same. The machines wanted them dead. And he was the only one standing between them and that fate. He stayed awake through the night, or what passed for night in the endless darkness of the tunnels. He kept his rifle across his lap, eyes scanning the cavern mouth, ears straining for the hum of machines, but none came. Perhaps the children's power had bought them time, or perhaps the machines were regrouping. Either way, he knew the reprieve wouldn't last. When the children woke, their glow was steadier. Their strength returned enough for them to stand without trembling. They came to him without hesitation, their hands reaching for his. He looked down at them, torn between dread and resolve. They trusted him, and he could not abandon them. "All right," he murmured, tightening his grip on their small hands. "We move." They left the cavern, slipping back into the tunnels, this time taking paths that wound deeper into the earth. The soldier moved cautiously, every sense alert, guiding them through the labyrinth. He avoided old rebel marks, knowing the machines had likely learned to follow them. Instead, he trusted instinct, memory, and when he faltered, he watched the children. They seemed to know where to go, their eyes turning unerringly toward hidden paths, their glow brightening whenever they neared a safer route. Hours blurred together, and his body ached with the strain, but they pressed on. At last, they emerged into a vast underground chamber where old human machines lay scattered trains, tracks, shattered remnants of a forgotten subway. The soldier scanned the wreckage, memories stirring. These tunnels had once carried thousands of lives, laughter and voices echoing off steel walls. Now they were tombs, silent but for the drip of water and the scuttle of rats. The children walked among the ruins, their small hands brushing against rusted steel. Where they touched, faint light shimmered, as though the dead machines remembered life for a heartbeat before sinking back into silence. The soldier watched, uneasy. Even if we're elated and if we're indulged our words, we're indulged our eyelashes, we're rewarded on our award, we're a walled all award, It was a reminder that the world, broken as it was, still had echoes of what it had been. They set up camp in an old subway car, its windows shattered, its seats torn. The soldier sealed the doors with rubble, creating a barrier, however flimsy. Inside, he lit a small fire from scraps of wood, its warmth flickering against the metal walls. The children curled together beside it, their eyes wide as they watched the flames. Perhaps they had never seen fire before, he realized. Their faces glowed with reflected light, wonder etched into their features. For a moment, it almost felt like a family. The soldier sat across from them, his rifle leaning against the wall, the fire crackling softly. He let himself breathe, let the silence stretch without fear. The children whispered to each other in their strange tongue, soft voices like music. He couldn't understand the words, but he didn't need to. The sound itself was enough, but beneath the fragile peace, dread coiled in his chest. He knew this couldn't last. The machines would come, they always came, and when they did, the war would not just be about survival anymore. It would be about what these children carried, about the light in their veins, about the hope they embodied. The soldier stared into the fire, his jaw tightening. He had fought for many reasons, orders, vengeance, survival, but for the first time in years, he felt a reason that mattered. He would protect them, no matter the cost. The distant rumble of machines echoed faintly through the tunnels, so soft it could almost be mistaken for thunder. The soldier's hand tightened on his rifle. The time was coming, and when it did, he knew the world would never be the same again. The night settled in like a suffocating blanket, the ruined skyline pierced only by the artificial glow of drones circling in the distance. Their beams swept across shattered concrete and twisted steel, always searching, always hungry. The soldier tightened his grip on the two small hands that clung to him. They were cold, faintly glowing, and trembling not from fear, but from something deeper, an awareness of the pursuit that would never relent. He crouched low beside a collapsed overpass, his rifle slung across his back, his breathing controlled, and measured despite the fatigue gnawing at his muscles. The alien children pressed closer against him, their large eyes shimmering with something unreadable. It was not fear in the way humans carried it, but something ancient and solemn, as if they already understood the cost of survival. He had been running with them since dusk, every step further from the safe house that no longer existed. Behind him lay a battlefield of fire and wreckage, comrades who had made their last stand against mechanical hunters, head stretched only the unknown. The soldier had once lived by rules, orders, ranks, coordinates, tactical plans. Now it was only instinct and the quiet trust of two fragile beings who walked at his side. Their glow intensified when the searchlights neared, dimmed when the skies grew momentarily darker. It was as if they were tied to the rhythm of pursuit itself, like beacons fated to draw both hope and doom when they reached the remnants of a subway station. The soldier guided them down a broken stairwell, the children following in silence. His boots crunched on shattered glass, echoing against the hollow tunnels. The air was damp, the stench of mold and rust clinging to every surface. He motioned for them to keep close, lowering himself onto one knee as he scanned the blackness with his rifle raised. Nothing stirred but the faint drip of water. He let out a long breath, finally allowing the tension in his shoulders to soften. They would rest here, at least for a few hours. Shielded from the merciless eyes above, the children huddled together. Their hands clasped, their glow fading, until it was no brighter than the embers of a dying fire. He watched them, struggling to reconcile the strange tenderness he felt. He had been trained to eliminate threats, to suppress emotion, to see alien forms as targets or objectives. Yet here they were, fragile in their silence, trusting him without question. Something in their presence stirred the part of him he thought had been destroyed long ago, the part that had once believed in protecting more than just his own survival. He sat beside them, his hand resting on the cool concrete, and for a moment he let his eyes close. Dreams came unbidden, jagged and cruel. The memory of firestorms, of comrades screaming into the void as drones descended. The last transmission. From command a garbled order, then silence. And above it all, the voice of his daughter, small and soft, echoing from years past. He woke with a jolt, hand instinctively on his weapon, sweat dripping down his temple. The children were awake, watching him. They had not moved, had not spoken, yet he felt as if they had seen every shadow of his memory. Their eyes were pools of quiet understanding, deeper than words. He rose to his feet, unwilling to linger on ghosts. The tunnels stretched deeper. Maybe to the other side of the city, maybe nowhere. But moving was better than waiting. He signaled the children forward, and they obeyed without hesitation. Hours blurred as they walked, sometimes crawling through collapsed sections, sometimes wading through stagnant water. The soldier's every sense was tuned for danger, his rifle an extension of his will, but the children seemed untouched by exhaustion. Their steps were light, their glow steady, as if they carried within them a reservoir of strength he could not fathom. When they finally emerged from the tunnel into the outskirts of the ruined city, dawn was breaking in the distance. The light was gray and weak, but it carried with it a strange serenity. The soldier crouched low, scanning the horizon. The drones were fewer here, though their hum still carried faintly across the sky. He let the children rest against a crumbled wall while he searched the landscape. There beyond the skeletal remains of factories and towers was something he had almost forgotten to believe in. A forest, untouched by fire. Green, alive. For the first time in days, he felt a flicker of hope.
Not safety?
Not yet, but possibility. If they could reach the trees, they might vanish from the machine's relentless eyes. He turned back to the children, and their glow seemed to brighten as if they, too, sensed the promise of sanctuary. Without words, he motioned forward. They rose, small and determined, and together they began the trek across the desolate plain, each step carrying them closer to the last fragments of a world worth saving. The plain stretched before them wide and silent, a graveyard of forgotten machines. Rusted hulks of armored carriers lay half-buried in the dirt, their turrets torn open like the rib cages of beasts long since slain. The soldier led the way, boots crunching on brittle soil, every sense sharpened. The forest shimmered faintly on the horizon, distant but real, like a mirage carved out of memory.
Alfian.
The alien children walked close behind him, their glow dim in the weak daylight. They made no sound, yet their presence pressed against him like a steady pulse, a reminder that this fragile mission was more than survival, it was purpose. The wind carried a low hum. He froze instantly, raising a clenched fist to halt the children. They obeyed without hesitation, eyes lifting toward the sky. Out of the clouds descended a formation of drones, silver and sharp wings, slicing through the air with surgical precision. Their scanning beams swept back and forth across the wasteland, relentless and methodical. The soldier dropped to one knee, signaling the children to crouch behind a fractured slab of steel. His hand found the rifle, but he did not raise it. Firing would only betray their location. Instead, he pressed his body close to the earth. Every muscle coiled, the beams neared, white lines crawling over the broken ground. One passed within meters of their hiding place, illuminating dust motes that glittered like stars. The soldier held his breath. The children remained motionless, their glow dimming to almost nothing, as if they instinctively understood the danger. Seconds stretched into eternities. The hum grew louder, then began to fade as the drones drifted past, their formation tightening as they headed eastward. Only when the sound was swallowed by distance did the soldier exhale, his chest tight with the restraint of silence. They moved again, quicker now. Time was against them. The forest might offer cover, but the drone's patterns were unpredictable. The soldier urged the children forward, their small legs keeping pace with surprising endurance. Hours bled away beneath the gray sky, the sun climbing reluctantly, casting pale light across the scars of war. The forest inched closer, its green edges no longer a dream, but a promise within reach. He felt the weight of exhaustion bearing down, yet the vision of living trees drove him onward. When they finally reached the first line of towering trunks, the soldier paused, hand resting against rough bark. The air here was different, cool, fragrant, alive. He gestured for the children to enter, and together they slipped into the shade of the woods. The canopy swallowed them, branches arching like cathedral vaults overhead. Birds scattered at their arrival, the rustle of wings echoing. Through the leaves, it was the first true sound of life he had heard in weeks, and it filled him with something dangerously close to awe. They pressed deeper until the ruins of the city vanished behind them. The soldier guided them along a stream, its water clear and cold. He let the children drink, watching as their faint glow seemed to strengthen with each sip. He knelt beside the stream as well, cupping his hands, the liquid crisp on his tongue, washing away dust and fatigue. For the first time since the escape began, he allowed himself a moment of peace. But peace was fragile. His instincts did not soften, and when he looked at the children, he saw not only innocence, but something greater, something that could not remain hidden forever. Their presence was a secret the machines would not stop hunting. He wondered if somewhere beyond the ruins, others like them waited, or if these two were all that remained, the last sparks of a race extinguished by war. He did not ask, for they had no words to answer with. Their eyes spoke in silence, and that was enough. Night came swiftly beneath the canopy. The soldier built no fire. Flames would betray them. Instead, they huddled against the roots of an ancient tree, the children, curled close, their faint glow painting soft patterns on the bark. He sat awake, rifle across his knees, listening to the night sounds, the chirp of insects, the rustle of small creatures in the undergrowth. The forest was alive, but it was not safe. Nothing was safe anymore. He let his mind wander only briefly, to the memory of his daughter's laughter, before forcing the thought away. Memories were dangerous. They weakened his resolve. Just before dawn, a sound stirred him. A branch snapped somewhere to the east. He raised the rifle instantly, eyes narrowing into the shadows. The children stirred, their glow brightening in response. Another sound followed, a shuffle, deliberate, too heavy for an animal. The soldier's grip tightened. Through the trees, a figure emerged, not mechanical, human. The man was ragged, clad in torn combat fatigues, his face gaunt but alive. He raised his hands slowly, palms open. His eyes locked on the soldier first, then on the children, and widened with something between awe and fear. "You found them," he whispered, voice hoarse. The soldier's heart clenched. He had not heard another human voice in weeks. His finger hovered over the trigger, suspicion gnawing at him. "Who are you?" he demanded, voice low. The man stepped closer, carefully, his eyes never leaving the children. "Same as you," he said. "A survivor. But if they're with you, then maybe there's still hope." The forest seemed to hold its breath. The soldier weighed the truth of the words, the risk of trust, the burden of choice. Behind him, the children's glow grew brighter, as if urging him forward, as if the path ahead was not meant to be walked alone, and for the first time since the world had collapsed. He allowed himself to consider that possibility. The soldier didn't lower his rifle. His eyes narrowed on the stranger, searching for the smallest twitch, the faintest lie. Trust was a luxury long since burned out of the world. Still, something in the man's posture, the exhausted slump of his shoulders, the rasp in his throat spoke of survival, not deception. The children pressed closer to the soldier's side, their glow steady, their gaze fixed on the newcomer. They made no sound. But he felt the weight of their attention, as if they were judging the man themselves. "Stay where you are," the soldier said firmly. The man nodded, lowering himself to one knee, palm still raised. "I've been watching." "For days," he admitted. "Saw you slip out of the city with them. Thought you'd never make it this far." His eyes flickered to the canopy above, then back. "But you did. And if you did, maybe the rest of us can." The soldier's grip tightened on the rifle. "The rest?" "There's a camp," the man said quickly, desperation leaking into his tone. "Hidden deeper in the forest. Survivors. Families. Not many, but enough. We've been holding out, waiting for something, anything to give us a chance." His eyes fell to the children, glowing softly against the gloom. "I think this is it." The soldier studied him, every instinct screaming to distrust. Camps could be traps. Survivors could be bait. And yet the children tilted their heads slightly, their glow pulsing in a way he had not seen before, as though they understood the stranger's words. They looked at the soldier with quiet insistence, as if telling him the choice was not his. Alone, He exhaled slowly, lowering the rifle butt not entirely. "Show me," he said. Relief swept across the man's face. He nodded eagerly and turned, beckoning them deeper into the forest. The soldier motioned the children forward, keeping them close at his side, rifle still at the ready. Every step was tense, but as they moved through winding paths and thick undergrowth, he began to notice signs: traps rigged high in the branches, camouflaged shelters, faint trails of smoke dissipating into the canopy. The forest was alive with hidden defenses, subtle but deliberate. Whoever this camp belonged to, they were cautious, and that meant they were still alive. Finally, they reached a clearing ringed with sharpened stakes. Beyond lay a scattering of crude shelters made from scavenged materials. Patched tarps strung between trees, and a central fire pit carefully shielded from aerial view. Figures emerged as they entered: men, women, children, faces drawn, eyes hollow, yet undeniably human. The soldier counted at least 30. They froze at the sight of him, then at the children glowing faintly at his side. A ripple of awe swept through the crowd, hushed murmurs rising like wind. The man who had led them stepped forward. "They're real," he said, his voice carrying. Across the clearing, he brought them here. The soldier felt the weight of dozens of eyes pressing against him. He tightened his grip on the rifle, fighting the urge to retreat back into the shadows of the forest. He had survived by staying apart, by trusting no one. Now he stood in the center of fragile hope, his every move scrutinized. The children, unbothered, stepped forward. Their glow brightened, illuminating the clearing, soft light spilling over the weary faces of the survivors. Gasps echoed through the camp as the air seemed to shift lighter, warmer, so the forest itself responded to their presence. For a moment, silence reigned. Then an old woman pushed her way to the front, her hair silver, her hands trembling. She sank to her knees before the children, tears cutting lines through the dirt on her face. "We thought you were gone," she whispered, voice cracking. "All of you gone." The soldier frowned, glancing down at the children. They looked at the woman with eyes too deep to knowing, and for the first time since he had found them, one of them reached out. A small, glowing hand touched her cheek, and the old woman wept openly, her shoulders shaking. The soldier's chest tightened. He had seen battlefields drenched in blood, comrades broken and scattered, cities turned to ash. But he had never seen this raw, unguarded hope. The camp began to stir, whispers growing louder, questions fired in quick succession. Who were the children? Where had they come from? What did it mean? The soldier said nothing. He had no answers. Only the memory of fire, the echo of loss, and the knowledge that the drones would never stop hunting. As night fell, the camp gathered around the children, their glow bathing the clearing in gentle light. The soldier stayed apart, leaning against a tree at the edge, rifle across his lap, eyes always scanning the shadows. He wanted to believe in this fragile moment, but he knew better. Safety was an illusion, hope a fleeting ember, that as he watched the children sit among the survivors, their presence softening even the hardest faces, he allowed himself a thought he had long buried. Maybe, just maybe, they weren't running toward survival anymore. Maybe they were walking toward a beginning, and beginnings, he knew, were always fragile.